Okay, hello people with early Australian cars. I just thought I'd do a quick video on this RVB horn. This is a so-called Aertone horn. These were sold also by the National Automotive Service Company, NASCO, of General Motors Holden, as a aftermarket, or dealer rather, a dealer accessory, as part of a dual horn package, which you can see in the NASCO manuals. And this particular model, so obviously a 6-volt horn, this one because it's out of an early Holden, but very similar form factor used for 12-volt and 24-volt excuse me, horns as well, up until the late 50s, when they changed form factor. So I got this one on eBay. It was completely knackered. I'll show you some of the details in a moment. I'm just holding this together because I've already pulled it apart. And really, I just thought I'd do this as a bit of a public service video, because I'm going to chuck this in the bin. But I thought before I did, I might just rip it apart so that others could see how these things are assembled, if you need to fix them. And this one would certainly need to be fixed, but I think it's beyond the point of recovery for a few reasons. The first reason is that it was full of water, and so it's been rusted. And I think a combination of the rust and of built-up magnetism in the core meant that the armature that operates the horn, this metal disc here, was locked down onto the magnetic core for a long time, and it's distorted the diaphragm. So this diaphragm is actually pretty badly out of shape. So that's a fundamental problem. The other fundamental problem is that this horn was run on 12 volts for a long time, and it's completely destroyed the guts of it. And just to show you some details of the problems that arise, if I can figure out a way to hold this in place and video it at the same time. Okay, so what we can see here is it's overheated so much that the coil wire has actually melted and come off. But additionally, the contacts, which you can see here, these are the contacts which oscillate up and down and power the coil. The end of, I don't know what you'd call it, the contact armature maybe, I don't know. But it's actually been eaten away by spark erosion, because the phenolic board that sits over the top of it has at some point snapped off, probably due to violent oscillation from being operated off 12 rather than 6 volts. So people who say, oh yeah, look, just run your 6-volt horn off 12, it just makes it a bit louder, it works a bit better. That's complete rubbish. It completely overloads the coil, it causes them to overheat, it burns the contacts, destroys them. But one thing that's interesting is, even when operating off 6 volts, there is this, well, this is in fact a resistor. It is nichrome resistance wire wrapped around a piece of formica. Sorry, not formica, it'll come back to me. The natural stone that used to be used in combustion heater doors. Sorry, it's mica. It's mica. This is just a pure sheet of mica with the resistor wrapped around it. So even when they're operating off 6 volts, they needed a resistor. So just to talk through, I guess, some of the key faults that you might have to pull them apart for. So this one, if you were to try and recover it, it would certainly need the coil rewound, because the coil has been badly damaged and has, as you can see, it's very heat fatigued. The enamel's fallen off it. It's completely knackered. So you would need to rewind the coil. So how do you get to the coil? Now, it's actually very difficult. You've got to start by disassembling the whole horn, so you've got to remove all of the bolts and screws around the periphery, which is not easy. But then you also need to remove the entire diaphragm assembly. So now these are very sensitive to how they're adjusted, so I suggest that, you know, before, excuse me, I got a bit of a cough. Just had a bit of a flu. So I suggest before you pull these things apart, you know, if you're going to reassemble it, unlike this one, you know, to be a working unit, take measurements, get the back of your vernier calipers or your dial calipers and accurately measure the positioning of all of these elements, like this spring, and crucially the you know, this metallic disc, which is basically this is the object that I'm tapping on right now that is attracted and pushed away from the magnet every time the contacts are made or broken. That, you know, that basically pulls the diaphragm up and down. So the adjustment of this so that it has suitable clearance from the core here, the laminated core of the inductor, is very important. So do take measurements. But look, I thought I'd take the opportunity to show you how this is assembled. So the order of disassembly is, firstly, you take the lid off the horn, you carefully pry it off. I soaked this one with penetrine or, you know, WD-40, similar, for a day before attempting to pry it off. Pried it off carefully, discovered it had been full of water, so that was a bad start. The next step is then to remove all of the peripheral screws so that you can take off the horn die casting, the actual horn itself, which leaves you with this pressed steel assembly that carries the armature and the diaphragm. Then from this point, the next step is to remove the spring from the top of the armature. Then finally you can undo this adjustment nut and disassemble the full armature. Interestingly, this disc is also threaded, so you have to pay careful attention to the orientation of this flat. And I think this flat has also been machined to make it possible to slip the disc past the contact. And this contact, as you can see, as I said, you know, what I call the contact armature. Not exactly sure what its real name is, but it's meant to protrude out a bit further. As you can see, if you look closely, you might be able to see here that it's been eaten away by spark erosion. So it's actually quite difficult to disassemble. Once you get this off, then finally you can get to the armature coil itself. So, which comes out like so. And you know, that is actually a very difficult process to get the armature coil out. So I wouldn't recommend undertaking this unless you have a serious problem, like if the unit has stopped working. As you can clearly see here that, you know, this has been vibrating. It's probably shorted to earth here. You can see burn marks. This has had a really tough life, this horn. So, you know, if it hadn't been filled with water, the 12 volts would have destroyed it, I suspect, anyway. So look, just hopefully that's a useful tip on what is inside these RVB horns. You know, I wouldn't recommend attempting to disassemble them unless you've got a serious problem. Most of the time you can adjust these or fix these simply by cleaning the contacts, giving them a good clean with some Shellite or brake cleaner on a piece of cotton. Just get in there, clean the contacts up, maybe even redress them with a strip of, 400 or 800 wet and dry. Get a bit of 800 wet and dry between the contacts and pull it through. Do both sides. Readjust while you've got it hooked up to a battery. Just apply power, check it, apply power, check it, until you're getting a nice sound without, the clanging of metal from overdriving it. And once you get to that point, chances are it'll be as good as new. If you have the misfortune to have one that has a knackered coil like this, I hope this video is a bit of a help, bit of a guide on how to get it to all come apart. Okay, enjoy.